Welcome to the podcast. I'm your host, James Protin. Every week I will be sharing the experiences that have defined my journey and talking with people who have their own powerful story to tell. It's about doing better and being better in life, business, and all things in between. The visually inclined can catch us on YouTube, or you can check us out on just about every podcast platform. Coach Humbert, thanks for joining us. Hail Mighty Leopards. We're here in the locker room, and coming off a state championship. I've been wanting to sit down with you, and we talked about doing this actually during last school year. It's just taking us all summer to get here.
Long time coming.
So congratulations. Thanks a lot for joining me.
Absolutely, a pleasure hosting you guys here. Obviously, we're in a beautiful second week of camp locker room, so I hope the smell isn't terrible. But this is where it is. This is the factory, so we're in the right place.
It's a tiptoe through the tulips, man. That's hard to say. Tiptoe through the tulips.
Yep.
So, first state championship, second WPIAL championship. I've been around. I watched the program. Been a supporter for a very, very long time, and I want to start with the fellas that you have now. We're going into the 2023 season, coming off, without a doubt, the most successful season in school history.
This might be the time for a quarterback keeper.
3rd down and 1. Wharton, the quarterback keeper. They didn't get a push there. They did not get a push off that line of scrimmage. Still no signal. The game's going to come down to 4th down. And now there's a fumble, and Belle Vernon has held. 88 with the football is Aiden Johnson.
Unbelievable situation right here. Unbelievable.
And the Leopard sideline is going nuts now.
So, I've always heard, and I'm sure you've heard this too, what's the question? What's the hardest thing about winning a state championship?
Honestly, the hardest thing, and obviously take the competition aspect out of it, I think is just the duration of the season. Mm-hmm. I mean, in this day in scholastic sports, and it's not just football, it's every sport.
Sure.
I mean, it's a year-round project, it's a year-round endeavor.
Well, absolutely.
So when those kids are grinding from roughly February through August, and then you hit the pinnacle of August with camp, and then you add on 15 games, and 2 scrimmages, I just think the duration of it was probably the biggest challenge. And especially when you get to the postseason, everything increases a little bit. The amount of film you're watching with the kids. I mean, there's times where we'd practice, boosters would provide dinner, then we'd go back to film, and it was long nights. And kids are kind of built for that. I think the irony is, and I joke about it, is that one thing that I felt, because I get asked a lot of questions about last season, and one thing that I guess somebody asked me a question, what impressed you the most about that team? Mm-hmm. And I think their excitement and enthusiasm week after week in the postseason. There's been years in the past where, especially with the younger kids, when the JV season's over, they don't get a lot of reps, they don't get to play a lot.
Right.
You can just see it's long for them, and that fire isn't there like it was maybe 5 weeks earlier. To see those kids just constantly keep coming back for more every day, wanting it, there was no fatigue. The fatigue was more on the coaches.
I believe that.
I think the coaches were more worn out, including myself. I mean, as soon as we came home on that state trip back, we're driving back, and my wife, we're talking, and I'm like, it's Christmas in 2 weeks. And I'm like, I hope Santa Claus has everything prepared, because I haven't really talked to Santa at all.
You haven't even haven't had that conversation.
Yeah, so I think that, I think just the longevity of the season, which we wouldn't want it any other way, I think that was kind of one of the challenges.
Oh, I believe it. And you're right. Your kids, it's like I said, one of my grandsons was a freshman last year, but those youngsters, not only were they engaged, like as you said, in practice, but you could see it on the field during games. Yep. They were into the games. They weren't just standing around or sitting on the bench. They were up and they were into every game. And that speaks volumes about your program and what you have built and what you continue to build.
Well, the culture was evident from a standpoint that those freshmen got it. You know, those freshmen understood, those underclassmen, those JV kids, that it's a process. Mm-hmm. And so much in society, in youth sports and whatnot, and even at the scholastic level, even at the college level, I was watching a documentary, and this kind of popped into my head, what I'm about to explain, is that there's just that instant gratification. You're a freshman, you should be playing. Oh, sophomore, you should be playing. It's a process sometimes.
It is a process.
And you have to earn your stripes. And if you're good, you're going to play. There's no one that's going to kind of put the clamps on you and hold you back from it. But to see those kids and realize, like, my contribution with this team this year isn't necessarily a Friday evening and afternoon. My contribution is prepping those kids so that they're successful, because I want that reciprocated when I'm a senior. And that's the thing that you really try to instill to the young kids, that, like, your time will come and you're going to look back on those underclassmen when your time is here, and you're going to expect them to perform and conduct themselves in a manner that you have to right now. So the kids got it. The culture was there. As much as I'd like to say I'm the shepherd of that, the credit goes to the kids and the coaches, because that DNA has been established and it's been evident for the past 5 years or so. So those kids just gel to it. They gel to the norm, and that's really what you want. When we talk about leadership, we don't really talk about, I need you to lead this guy or do that. I need you to model positive behavior. And those kids all model positive behavior. So your posterity is just going to do that, because that's all they know. That's all they see. So, shout out to those seniors from last year. Shout out to the kids that have come before them to kind of make sure that the DNA of the culture and the program is that expectation.
Well, and you're building young men, because, again, being close to it, but yet seeing it from over here, right? Seeing it from the stands. The young men that are coming out of this program, I'm not even talking about the kids that have gone on and played college ball, Division 1, 2, 3, 4. It doesn't matter to me. But at the end of the day, they're respectful, and just the way they carry themselves once they leave this building, is impressive. And that was always, I mentioned to you earlier, one of the kids that I had when I coached here, who went on to, he's a doctor. He played college basketball, at Division 3, and wound up being a doctor. But this, the kids that I see out in the community, they say, "Hey, coach, how you doing?" And I haven't coached since 2003. And you still get that, "Hey, coach." These kids are in their 40s now.
Well, the interesting thing is when you talk about impressions and things that last with young adolescents, is these are the years that truly last with them. This stuff affects them 20 years down the road. They're going to get with their buddies 20 years from now, and all they're going to talk about is this, and those memories and those things. And, we have a mantra around here, and it's on our wristbands, it's everywhere. And that is reject comfort, so, and I preach it all the time. And I know I tell everyone I'm a broken record. My message, I hope, doesn't get stale, but I'm a big consistency guy. And what I told those kids 5 years ago is still evident what I want to tell the kids today. And that, the goal of me truly is just to make them uncomfortable. It's not to be their best friend. That's what they got positional coaches for. My friendship with them will last when they graduate and when they're out of the
they'll
program.
Appreciate.
Yeah, absolutely. You hope so, right? Yeah. But embracing and rejecting comfort is kind of at the forefront of everything that we try to do. We're not perfect at it, but we try to do that, because, obviously that's going to prepare you for a battle on a Friday night and a Saturday morning, but it's also going to help you become a better father, a better husband. It's going to prepare you when you have uncomfortable moments when it comes to trying to get a job and starting your career. And that's why I always tell those kids they're fortunate that, they're part of a team-oriented game like football.
100% right.
Because that will affect them. That will help them.
Absolutely.
And it will honestly give them a leg up against competition. It's competition in the real world.
That's exactly
when
right.
you come out and you got a degree and this guy got a degree, who's going to get the wiggle room? Right. And if you have these things on your resume in terms of football and the traits that come along with it, with time management and responsibleness and resourcefulness and adversity, I'm willing to bet if all is equal on a sheet of paper, that employer is probably going to go with a kid that's played scholastic football.
There's no doubt. I've done that.
There you go.
I've done that. And when you think about, you talk about preparing for that battle, for that. Listen, Tuesday afternoon in a cubicle with a deadline looming over your head.
100%.
Let me tell you something that you want to talk about pressure. That's pressure. Right?
Or
because your livelihood depends on
with a difficult boss or a difficult call.
Absolutely.
Like, we put them in situations where we're difficult to deal with at times. And again, that's only going to
disrupting
make them
comfort.
Better.
That's absolutely fantastic. I love that. Magical season, no doubt about it. But you had some pretty good years. You were building up to this. This just didn't happen overnight. This wasn't, a Disney movie where all of a sudden you just showed up. But, you came close a few times and came up a little bit short. And those were really talented teams in their own right.
Absolutely.
But this team just happened to gel. So I'm gonna be a little controversial here. We touched on this earlier.
Yeah.
So you came close and came up short in Class 4A.
Sure.
You accept the numbers and you go down to Class 3A and you win it all.
Absolutely.
I think that from my perspective, again, from over here in the cheap seats, it was a great move.
Sure.
I think it was a move that was made in the best interest of your kids.
Absolutely. And I think that some of the negative sports pundits that kind of look at the program, I don't even look at it as a move. It's like the PIAA says this is what you are, that's what you are. And, we've never strayed away from any aspect of competition. I mean, that's not us, that's not in our DNA. But when the number came out, it was a no-brainer. And, even to the point where I reached out to other schools that have went through that process.
Okay.
Pine Richland won a state championship, I believe, in 17. They dropped a 5A in 18, called up there, hey, what was the thought process? How was the vibe in the community? Not one issue.
No worries.
McKeesport was 5, dropped to 4, called over there, same thing. Central Valley won 2 WPIALs, 2 states, I believe. They were 4, dropped to 3, called up there, no issue. So I think we got beat up a little bit about it. I think there was some negativity around it. And to me, it was never a deciding factor in anything. It was just common sense to do that. And you're always going to have people that are going to view things differently. And I think the neat thing about our kids was, at the end of the day, you hope that people around the program, within the program, outside the program, in the community, outside the program, at the end of the day, you just hope that they want to see kids succeed.
Just support the kids.
Is that not what the goal is? To see kids succeed,
100%,
to see the community
100%.
succeed. And sometimes people have a problem with that. I hate to say it; it's an uncomfortable thing to say.
But it's a reality of what you do. Like I said, I've been there.
Sure.
I mean, that's the reality of it. It's not all sunshine and rainbows.
Correct. Yeah.
You don't always have the community support.
Yeah, absolutely.
Especially when you're in a district like Belle Vernon, which is made up of multiple communities.
No doubt about it.
Okay. So you have that, we have our youth programming set up, not necessarily in football, but when my kids were growing up, it was up until they got to middle school, to 8th grade, 7th, 8th grade, they competed. Ross Draver competed against Belmar. They competed against. So those
unique
kids were,
in this day and age.
Yes, and they actually those kids were raised to but then all of a sudden you throw them in a situation where now you got to come together and hold hands and walk out on the field and be brothers.
And listen, when I first came to Belle Vernon, that was very, I don't want to say evident. I didn't see it. It was talked about by a lot of the old timers in that divide. So that's there. And ironically, we try to really incorporate that past. I mean, if you come in any of our sports, if you come in the locker rooms, if you go up to
the banner coming in,
we do the legacy logos and whatnot. We really try to foster that sense of community and history, and we really try to make sure that the kids understand that. We put the North Belle Vernon and Jackrabbits logo everywhere. I mean, why would you not add that history into it? But like you said, you're always going to have people that aren't necessarily the biggest supporters of you. And the last thing I'll say about it is, I think that was such a neat aspect to see about the kids and the team last year and their resolve, because it's not it's commonplace for the coach to get beat up no matter what. We live in southwestern Pennsylvania.
Football is king. That's where
look at the professional and the college levels.
Absolutely,
it's common sense for coaches to bear that burden of criticism. But to see some of the kids kind of get it last year was something that I haven't seen. Some of the comments and whatnot, and the way the kids just handled it. I mean, it goes back to what we started off with. I hope I'm doing my job by preparing these kids for tough situations, uncomfortable moments. And boy, that was probably one of the most proud things I was, to see how those kids dealt with that negativity, turned the other cheek, and then they manifested into a state championship.
Yeah, and that was such a great ride, not only for the team, but for the community.
Yeah.
I was at every game, and I was out at the state championship game, made that trip. I was here when you guys pulled back in. And listen, when that bus came up Crest Avenue,
Special.
My God, that's a moment that, I mean, not only the kids, but your family, and even for us standing there as a community.
The bus driver, the coach bus driver, he didn't want to leave. He got off the bus. I'm worried because I said, hey, we're having a beach party, We come back, everyone goes back, and the bus just gets bombarded, right? And he's pulled in a very not adverse place up in front of the press box.
Sure.
And we're down there for a while. And I'm sitting there thinking, this guy, I hope they don't charge us extra. He was down there. He said he never saw anything like this. He said he transports college athletes all the time.
It was special.
And he said it was really cool to see. And as much as we might have harped on the negative, that small percentage of negativity, that showed you the support.
Absolutely.
And the majority of that the community went through.
And
why would you not? Why would you not? Like, again, it has nothing to do about me and my coaches and whatnot. It's the kids. I mean, like, you covet that. You strive for that. Every kid wants to do that. I played football in Southwestern Pennsylvania. I grew up. Sure. That WPIAL championship is borderline spiritual. I mean, it's something that when you play football in Southwestern Pennsylvania, that is at the forefront of your mind all the time. And, to see the kids and the excitement and enjoyment, and really to see the families.
Yeah.
I mean, the neat thing is every family got to take a photo with that trophy with their kids.
Yes.
I mean, just think about that. I mean, it's just something neat, something special, and something that those kids it'll impact their lives for the rest of the year. And one other thing is our coaching staff. We have roughly about 25 people that are what we consider our support staff. We have roughly 16 coaches. And I think they don't get talked about enough in terms of their dedication and their time and their families and their commitment away from the families. And to see their families, you always kind of you got your coaches' wives, and I'm sure they want them home a little bit more. But when you can get to that point, everyone realizes all that time, energy, and sacrifice is worth it. And a lot of people ask me, what's the first thing that comes to your mind after that? I always think of the kids that came before, because I mean, we averaged 9 wins a season back to 2015.
That's exactly right.
It's been very successful.
It's a successful program. Absolutely.
We haven't been able to get across that. It was always kicking in the door to get to Heinz. We kicked in the door. We were down there twice. And injuries didn't play a real helpful role in that. But we didn't do it. And I hope that those kids felt validated that we were able to get that, because as much as it was for our kids last year, it was for those kids that came through ever since.
And I love the fact that you said that in the moment, right after.
I think about it nonstop.
You could have been, you won a WPIAL championship, which some people put as much, if not more, than a state championship.
Before I won it, before we won it, I've talked to a lot of people, and I'll be honest with you, 75% of those people, they say that WPIAL was more. But then you got to think, you're walking on the field at Heinz Field. I mean, that's
a big deal.
That's when you walk out that tunnel, and then you just sit there and you stare at that place, and you're on that field, and you're coaching down there, and you're playing down there. It makes sense why you do what you do.
Big deal.
Yeah,
it's a big deal, and so. The journey, I want to talk. You mentioned your coaches, and I know them. One of my guys, Big Frank, man. Listen, Big Frank can cook for me any day of the week, he's a good coach too.
Yeah, and a lot of those guys have been with me for a long time. They've been with me from my Ringgold days. I think that's another key thing. I think the administrative staff here on the board's been great with everything that we do. And when you look at programs, consistency is such a key thing. And when you look at a lot of programs that aren't successful, I mean, it's constantly turnover, it's constantly change. There's constantly people being ran out. There's constantly people, when you have that consistency aspect of things, and it doesn't happen overnight. We always bring a couple young guys on. I'm getting to the point where I'm getting a little older, so I have 2 guys that I coached that are on staff with me now.
Nice.
And it takes them 2 or 3 years to finally be able to comprehend everything from what you're trying to do drill base wise, practice wise, game wise, scheme wise, and then just interaction with kid wise, teaching wise. It's always great to have teachers, because you don't have to worry about, they should know, if they're a teacher, how to diversify their instruction, how to relate to kids, how to talk to kids. When you have people that aren't in that profession, it sometimes takes a little longer. So the thing that people don't really realize, and I don't want to act like everyone's ignorant, because I think a lot of people do, but to the average person that doesn't have football blown in their veins, it's a process. It takes a long time to get all of that synergy moving in the right direction.
There's a lot of trust, and you have that with your staff.
Absolutely.
You can see that. And I'll go, perfect example is Brett.
Absolutely.
Right? Brett Barish, defensive coordinator. Defense is a big part of who you guys are. It's a big part of your DNA. And listen, people in this community, whether they were involved or not, will be talking about that goal line stand for generations.
Absolutely.
Right? That was huge.
It was.
And your kids didn't even blink. I was sitting at that end of the field.
Yeah.
I was there. I was right there. They didn't even blink.
We were in that situation about 3 times throughout the year. So
it's amazing.
And I think everyone always asks what was going through your head when they were down there. The only thing that was going through my head when Newman Goretti got on the goal line was, on the headsets were 3 different people talking like, we got to get our 2-minute deal ready to roll. Find the script, see where we're at, get ready to go with that. I never batted an eyelash. Even if they scored, I never batted an eyelash.
Right.
And it's not just me not batting an eyelash. You hit it on the head. It's the kids.
Yeah.
And again, it's all those uncomfortable situations. Every day in practice, we have a stressors period, and one of the stressors is goal line situations.
Sure.
So, it's something that we practice all the time, and those kids did a great job of it. And in that moment, you can do a handful of things, but at the end of the day, you're just going to try to bring as much pressure as possible. But it's not about that. It's about the composure and the belief.
Yes.
And those kids had it, and that's what prevailed.
They truly did.
Yeah.
They conducted themselves throughout the entire postseason, to be honest.
Sure.
You guys, and again, I don't think enough attention or discussion has been given to the win down at Heinz against Avonworth.
Yep.
That was a pretty good football team.
Really good football team.
That was a good football team, and you guys beat them pretty good.
Yeah.
I mean, and you went down, they scored first,
Sure.
right? And but you, again, composure, trust. You've established a real brotherhood amongst this team. I think your kids know that what's happening in this locker room is everything.
Yep.
This is where it all starts. In your relationships and the way you interact and handle your staff, they see that. They
Sure.
watch that. And it filters its way down.
Yeah, and even when you look at the Heinz game, there was opportunities where really we probably left about 14 points out there. There was an opportunity where on that first drive down, Braden had a bad read on a read option deal, and that could have probably led to an easy quick 6 right there. But again, that's like Braden and all the other kids. Like at the end of the day, you're going to make mistakes. You'll watch professional football, and there's more
The
mistakes
growth in
than
those
there are.
kids. Oh, yeah.
It's all about how you respond from
Sure.
those mistakes. And a kid like Braden, I think the thing that was really impressed me about Braden was I think it was after Penn Trafford loss. We had a come to Jesus moment.
Sure.
I told the captains they don't really need much Matt Humbert right now. They need to hear it from you guys. So closed door deal.
Right.
They were in here for a half hour. Can't really say what was said. I'm sure it was a little emotional and heated. But then, I just remember Braden coming to me after that, and he's like, "Coach, I won't let you down. I promise I'll get better." And to me, he got better to the point that he's one of the best quarterbacks in Southwestern Pennsylvania.
That's one of the highlights of the season for me, is watching that young man's growth.
Huge.
In the fact that he's now, he's a senior, he's confident.
Sure.
I said this to you
His
earlier.
confidence level has been evident. Last year, I don't know if he was that confident.
No, I don't think you could tell he was tentative, and it ended up in some picks.
But his resolve was always there.
He never
and
gave
sometimes
up.
that's
He
even
kept going.
more important,
Right.
is how you handle that negativity, how you handle that adverse,
Sure.
type of situation that might arise. And again, I maybe romanticize my kids too much, and I think that's my job to do.
I think it is too.
Because you're around these kids so much, their family practically. But I'm just overly impressed with their resolve and their way that they can overcome bad situations and kind of not blink an eyelash at things. And really that's what the goal is. That's when you're down there in the summer, you're doing things that, as much as you're trying to run plays and defend plays, you're really trying to make them turn on each other. You're trying to put them in positions where it's an easy scenario for them to do a negative behavior.
You're being disruptive.
Correct.
And I think that is the job of you and your staff, as much to teach
Absolutely.
them X's and O's,
100%.
is to make them uncomfortable. And I love that philosophy. And I also like the fact that we've been talking now for, about 15 minutes or so, and we haven't brought up Quentin Mark.
Sure.
Okay. And I love that, that Quentin was on the podcast. He's a remarkable young man. And it's not easy to coach a kid like that with that kind of talent and that kind of buzz around him and things like that. But when you think about, again, Braden and Adam LeCarte and Stevie Macheska and these guys that just went out every day and chopped wood.
Yep.
Right.
Absolutely.
And knowing that every game, right, the first thing that's going to come out of every reporter is going to be Quentin Mark.
Sure.
But those kids never blinked. They supported Q, and it's like he's literally one of the guys. He's one of the brothers. I mean, he doesn't, there's no pedestal.
I say it all the time. If you'd come to practice and you were just an average person off the street, you would never know that there's a kid down there running around that's 5-star. Now watch him catch a ball, watch him run. You might see that.
Yeah.
But from that aspect, and it's coaching Quentin's as easy as coaching anybody else. And again, you may ask why. It's the people that have come before. There's one way to do things.
That's exactly right.
Those kids drank that Kool-Aid in 15. Yeah. I remember in 15, we said, listen, we're going to turn the heat up. We got to do things a little different. You know what I mean? Because when I first came over here, it was kind of a fill-out process, and then I just wiped the canvas blank, and we said we're going to paint a different picture here, and that went into just trying to really push the kids hard. And ever since then, I mean, those kids have established that process of you do your job. There's no ands and buts ors about it. You do your job. You don't expect anything. You know what I mean? There's never going to be a superstar here. We have a bunch, right?
Sure.
But there's never going to be a superstar in the sense of because it's always team over me and team over kid.
Yes.
And that's not an easy thing to buy into.
No,
it really isn't.
It's
so
not.
I need to be on my ante daily to navigate that. My coaches need to be on that daily. Your captains have to be on that. Your seniors, and it's a lot of work, but it's necessary work. Pulling that kid aside today and saying, "Hey, today, we're going to do this and that and the other." Make sure you respond in the right way. Kind of tipping the kid off a little bit,
absolutely.
Because you got to get those young guys.
These guys are watching.
These guys are watching. Whatever they see, that's what they're going. If that kid ties his shoe a certain way, that freshman's going to tie his shoes. If this kid wears something like this, that kid's it's just human nature.
There's no doubt.
If you don't understand human nature, it's a hard gig to kind of steer when you're in this profession.
Well, listen, one thing, the hardest thing for a 15, 16, 17-year-old young man to control is his ego.
Absolutely.
Right? Because it's all about being that way.
Sure.
So to teach them the ins and outs, the X's and O's, and also teach them how to be men.
Yep.
Football is the perfect platform for that. It really is.
And we call it the 3-hour rule. And what I mean by that is you have those kids roughly for 3 hours. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's a little longer with film and all that stuff.
Sure.
But you have those kids for 3 hours. And then when they go home, they're not listening to your rhetoric. They're listening to somebody else's rhetoric. And I don't mean that in a negative way.
No, I know what you mean.
I do.
I know what you mean. Sure.
So it's you really have to be impressionable and really have to make sure kids understand the objective here, which is team success. Yeah. Because it's not easy to be an adolescent going home, and especially a kid that might be on the bubble that might not be playing as much as he did, because you never know. And then you never know what's going on at that high school. Listen, this is a peculiar age all across America, all across the nation, where sometimes kids in that age bracket just aren't the nicest. We all know that.
You're 100%
so
right.
you
Absolutely.
might have kids that are in situations where they might not be getting nice things up at the school that they go to, or in that's any school district. Point being is, there's a lot of negativity that can manifest in that 24 hours. You only get them for roughly 3, so you have to make sure your 3-hour message is strong, that lands into the other hours.
Absolutely. So going back to you for a second, you started at Ringgold.
I did.
So you've, again, another school with pretty solid legacy and history of football. I mean, even going back beyond Joe Montana, the obvious. So, that you just jump right into the fire, young fella. I mean, you have 2 really strong and local programs that have a very, enthusiastic, I'll say, following and a lot of high expectations. Yep. So when you were at Ringgold, what prepared you for Belle Vernon?
I think the biggest thing is I was very young when I got the job. I was 23 years old. So,
really?
So I credit those people for hiring me over there, because I was very young to get that job.
That's for sure. That's rare.
And I was at Cal U. I played down there, GA down there. I did, GA down there. And then I coached a year down there, and I was going to come back for another year. And then the Ringgold thing kind of opened up, and I joined as an assistant, and then eventually it led to the head job right off the bat. So I think there were some difficult people and parents that I had to deal with at a very young age. I think that prepared me for not, I don't want to say Belle Vernon, just in coaching overall. When I look at some of my guys on staff and other staffs, and they're in their mid-20s, early 30s, I had to be thrown in the lion's den at 23. So it was either a thing where you're going to embrace this lifestyle,
sink or swim,
or you're gonna flee it. So I think those experiences, and things were just hard sometimes at Ringgold.
Sure.
From a resource standpoint, from getting kids to buy in, from getting kids to practice. I mean, that's a struggle that some communities have, and I think all that prepared me for the non-football stuff.
Yeah.
And again, I don't want to say it prepared me for Belle Vernon. It just prepared me as being a head coach.
For being a head coach, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and that's basic. That's actually what I didn't phrase the question really well. But so, and you're a Laurel Highlands guy.
I am.
And that's a nice rivalry with Belle Vernon.
It is, yes. We never want to lose to Laurel Highlands, that's for sure. You never want to lose to anybody. But and why I'll say that is because if you think about it, there's a lot of LH connections on my staff. The most recent is Zach Just. He's my running back coach. He was the head coach at LH for 7 years.
Okay.
And we gave Zach some good defeats up there, and I make sure to always remind him of that. So there's that aspect to it, a guy that was a head coach there for 7 years. And then there's my offensive line coach, who's actually my brother-in-law, who was my head coach at LH.
Really?
So you have three guys on this staff that have some significant ties to Laurel Highlands. And so I would like to say that our rhetoric and our finding our hatred for that school, it's not easy on that week.
That's a tough one. And you jump right in this year. You open up with them on the road up there.
Yeah.
And that's one of the cool things last year was the hype that game had because you had Rod Gallagher up there and Quentin obviously.
So we've watched that game a million times. Over the past few weeks, we've talked about it a lot. And I think every time I put it on, I laugh because when I look at the visitor center from the press box, it is packed. That might have been the biggest visitor center crowd that we had.
Yeah.
From a gate standpoint, we did really well.
Right.
And Laurel Highlands had a nice following. And like you should, when you have a kid like Rodney Gallagher and what he did to that community, and then you have the DeShields kid and a lot of others. It was kind of an underrated game because it was a big game for both.
Yeah, I think it was.
But I think the people that were stakeholders knew. I mean, we had stands packed. Laurel Highlands brought a ton of people.
Yep.
The people that have a pulse on it knew that that
was going to set the tone for both teams.
It was, yeah.
That was
and credit to Laurel Highlands because we came out of that. We won by over 20, I believe. And really the second half didn't really go our way in terms of, Quentin was cramping. He played limited. Right. Jetico had an issue. So really we didn't play with either of those kids in the second half. And I think a lot of people forget that. And I think credit to them, them taking that loss quick on the road to Belle Vernon, they were able to rebound and they were able to have a successful season after
they had a good year as well. Yeah, and look at what Gallagher's doing down at WVU. Yeah. I mean,
it
doing
shows
really well.
Obviously, they had to have some leadership from those kids.
Yes,
because
absolutely.
Again, whenever you're dealt a blow like that, sometimes that can really steer the ship south or it can steer it north.
Right.
And, I think that they probably were in good hands because it seemed like that kind of gave them a little bit fire like it did with us to motivate and propel.
Yeah, and you love seeing that because the only thing that makes a rivalry is if there's competition.
100%.
It's got to be competitive. TJ got the better of Belle Vernon for a while, and that's balanced out, and that's a really tough game every year, and everybody circles that on the calendar.
I think it's one thing because just thinking of program questions, I think it was interesting because even in 15 when we bought them and we snapped I'm probably wrong with this 58 or 68 home win streak by TJ when we beat them down there. Just to
that was big.
See that excitement from this community was pretty epic.
Sure.
I think that kind of grew. I think eventually we got to the point where okay, that win's just not enough. But you needed to start somewhere, right? And I think we always call it the full belly syndrome. You don't want to be full after that one. You want to constantly be eating. And then as the years progressed, then the next step was Heinz. We want to get to that point. Then we got to that point with all those really fantastic kids I had in 19. And then we were back. And then finally, again, it goes back to it's a 7-year process.
Right.
I mean, and again, I think human nature, we're very impulsive and we don't have patience sometimes.
Right.
And I think sometimes as much as it stinks, you need that patience and you need that growth from every aspect to propel you to be successful.
Right. So you've got a group of young men who reached the pinnacle last year.
Yep.
Okay. And one of the hardest things to do. So when you feel that you've peaked, okay, first thing you got to do is start to look for another mountain.
Sure.
Right? You can't just and that's even a harder message to convey to young men. So you guys, your team right now, how are you guys as a staff, as leaders and mentors, how are you motivating them, inspiring them? So let me say that again. How are you inspiring them to look for that next mountain? Because I don't believe you or I or anybody can motivate another human being.
Sure.
I think we can inspire them, but they have to motivate them. They have to find that motivation within them. So how are you and your staff inspiring these young fellas to find that next mountain?
I think there's many factors that go into that, and a lot of it is your senior leadership. I mean, we always talk about, in bad teams and bad organizations, no one leads. In good teams and good organizations, the coaches lead. In excellent teams and organizations, the players lead. So you really have to manifest that thought process, that inception-based mindset through your leadership of your seniors and whatnot. And they're the ones who have to really corral that. They're the ones that have to make sure that this locker room's spotless. They're the ones that have to do those things.
Right.
But they also need constant reminders. And I think we do a good job of, nothing is ever good enough here. And that's just because that's life. I think I'd be doing a disservice to kids if I wasn't frank and kind of wasn't honest with how life is. Nothing's ever given to you, and life is not fair, and it never will be fair. And the more that they understand that, I think the better off they'll be. But I'd be lying to say that, it's I don't want to say it's a hard task. I guess it is. It's just a task that you have to constantly remind yourself to do. And that is to always remind them of it's time to reset. It's time to refocus. And I think the good thing is I get kids that already are into that. I don't really think, I found myself kind of peeling back from that message over the summer because I didn't think it was really needed. And I think last year's preseason really helped us because as soon as we got our schedule, I think everyone anointed us the champs.
It's an impressive thing to be able to do, stay focused, to stay in the moment. Again, not to keep beating that moment, but you came off, you reached the pinnacle, and to just come back from that and get back into the grind, like you said, just keep chopping wood. Here we go. Let's back to what. But again,
I think we overthink things. It wasn't really a topic of conversation. Like we just started, boom. Here we go. Let's roll. How bad do you want it? How bad do you want to push yourself? It's not going to be easy. It's going to be harder than what it was last year. Everyone already anointed you. You got the bullseye on your back. You're all used to this. It's time to crank up the heat. And so, again, when you have a veteran group like I do coming back, a lot of the rhetoric doesn't necessarily need to be. I'm sure it will be at some point because you're going to have highs and you're going to have lows, and that's part of navigating it. But again, I've been. I don't want to credit the kids too much and slap on the back too much, but I've been pleasantly surprised and happy with their focus level over the summer. But again, that's what it should be. It's part of the culture. It's part of the DNA.
Absolutely. So. You put it down, and really that game is going to make any difference any game this season. So now real quick before we go, I want to touch on a couple of things. I was raised by a coach's wife.
Sure.
Okay, so let's talk. Tell me a little bit about your wife and you have two kids, two boys, right?
Yep.
Okay,
absolutely. Two girls. I'm sorry, Jesus, a boy and a girl.
Boy and a girl. Yep. Okay, so your wife has, again, it was a long, arduous season for her as well.
Yeah. Absolutely. And she does a fantastic job. I mean, I'm lucky to have her. I never have to worry about things at home. And that can be a big way on your head.
Oh, yeah.
And we're like all of us, it's just not just me, but we're getting to the points where, I'll be leaving and then I won't see my kids till 8:00 at night. And the sad thing about it is you're only getting about 2-3 hours with your kids during that time frame. And again, it goes back to the gratification when you're successful. It makes it all worth that time away. But the thing I have to say is I never have to worry about it because she's always there. She's the biggest supporter.
That's huge.
Be here, do that. So she either doesn't like me truly, or she's she just gets it. And I think she just gets it. I think part of that is we were together a little bit in college, and so she was around a football environment.
At least at a framework.
Yeah. So I think that kind of helped a lot with that as well. And our kids are so busy that regardless, she's somewhere with some of them doing something. But it is a lot of time away, and I'm not the only one to experience that. Coaches all over the nation experience that. But, it's about having that right person at home, and I'm fortunate that she
Absolutely.
She lets me come here and does my thing and supports it, doesn't really reject it.
Takes a special person.
Yeah,
really
absolutely does.
It really does. It puts a lot of pressure on a marriage, on a relationship.
It does. And I think the biggest thing is, and I always try to say this to people that have kids, like you have to make them all part of it. You know, like I'll probably try to make her more part of that she wants. Hey, I need you to do this. I need you to proofread that. I need you to help with this. But again, that just gives her more of a stake in it. And then, I always try to bring my son around, because he's a big help. You know what I mean?
Sure.
He's good with getting balls. He's good with setting up drills and stuff. But again, when you're here as much as you are, it's a two-pronged approach. Like, A, you're going to get time with him. Yeah. But B, you're going to get some extra free help out of it. I hate to say, and he's going to be around it. He's going to see it, and he looks up to these kids, and the kids love him too. I think that's the cool thing. It's good to see. Yeah. We promote family here. We always try to get coaches and families because you want your kids to see that. You want them to see that type of environment. In this day and age, you want them to hopefully, strive to have some form of a knit family like that. So it's as much as it's like, oh, it's good for me. There's subliminal messages and reasons to bring them around because you want to expose your kids to that type of lifestyle.
No, that's very cool because back in the day when I was a kid in the '60s, in the late '60s, I would I mentioned to you that I never missed a game. I was on the sidelines. The student managers used to take care of me. It's a miracle I didn't get run over.
I agree.
But so when I was probably about 8-9 years old, Coach Curry, they were really serious for whatever reason back then. They didn't want you leaving that coach box. You couldn't go in down.
Oh, they're as serious today as they ever been.
And he couldn't see very well.
Yeah.
Right. So he came up with this. I don't know how he did, but he would have me. I would wear bright red Cougars, red and black. I'd go stand down when they got inside like the 20. He couldn't see anymore. I'd go stand and mark the ball, and he could see in reference to the goalpost where it was.
So I have to get crafty like that.
That was my thing, man.
I got to start utilizing my son that way. Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah. So it was that was really cool. But he will look back on this
100%.
From experience. Listen, I was him. Yeah. I grew up at old Charleroy Stadium. I remember going to certain games. I won't cast any aspersions where they put an extra helmet on me on the bus because they rivalry stuff. Menneson. Okay, I didn't say that. But that's something that he will look back on, and it will just. Those are great memories you're building.
And it's funny because, like I said, it's a lot of it's for the players as well.
Sure.
Because I was impacted by it. I'll never forget, being in high school when there was always a little kid running around, and it was our defensive coordinator's kid. He's actually plays football at Oklahoma State right now.
Is that right?
His name's Ian Edenfield. I hate to keep giving shouts out to LH people, but
no, that's okay.
But I always thought like we as high school kids, we always enjoyed messing around with them, and it was always fun for him to be there. So again, those little things stick with you, and I see that when I see Nolan down there in the summer running around with the kids and whatnot. Yeah. The kids interacting with them, picking them up. Again, as much as he's benefiting from it, and I hope he realizes it. I think it's good for the kids to kind of just have something to break up the monotony of a grueling hot summer day.
Well, I still the guys that were in high school. When I was 10 years ahead of me, so to speak. They're in their 70s now. And they still mess with me the same way they did. When I was 8.
You always be that kid.
It's just but I'm going to close out. I'm going to talk a little bit more about last season. We're looking forward to this year, but one day when you're my age or maybe a little bit older, right? You're going to get together with that bunch.
Yep.
Okay. And they're going to be looking at you the same way they did last season.
Sure.
And they're going to be in their 40s.
Yep.
You're going to be in your 60s. My father was on Coach Curry's staff. They won the WPIAL, went undefeated in 1959. When my father passed away in 2017, every single one of those young fellows called me, right? They had a reunion. It was, and I went, and there was Joe Barcelona, good friend of mine. His dad was on that staff as well. We grew up together like brothers because we were always, at the stadium, at camp, whatever the case may be. At a reunion, and we went and we sat and laughed at these guys like you would not believe because it was 1959 again.
Yep.
Okay, so you're going to have that moment when, it's going to be 2022 again. 40
it's a brotherhood,
years
it's a fraternity. We preach a fraternity lifestyle.
So what do you think that'd be like? What do you think that'll be like?
I don't know. I think it would be a lot of, we like to get on the kids. We like to bust them up a little bit, a lot of joking and whatnot. And I just think it'll be special that, you'll have a group of kids that are kind of from your branch that all share very similar and common adverse type of moments and successful moments. And, you saying that kind of reminds me of an interview question I always give. It doesn't matter if I'm interviewing a basketball coach, baseball coach, and I hate to give it away because it's my question, my question I always give. So maybe people need to not pay attention to this, but I always ask the candidate at the end, how do you want your kids to remember you in 15 years? And sometimes it's a neat question because some people actually get emotional when they talk about it. And I think that kind of goes back to, regardless of all the outside noise, what you truly do. Regardless of all the success, we're chasing trophies. Everybody in America is chasing trophies. We do that.
Right. Absolutely.
But at the end of the day, when it's all said and done, man, like, I just hope that I impacted these kids in the right way. And I hope that I have a relationship with a lot of these kids. You're not going to always have it because you're not going to always have kids that see eye to eye with you. You're always not going to have parents see eye to you. But at the end of the day, you're talking about the 15 years down the road. Like, that's to me, that's what it's all about. And the neat thing is you want to be invited to those kids' wedding. The neat thing is you want them to call you and say, I got a kid like, hey, coach, I'm thinking about buying this apartment, And I'm thinking like, why are you asking me this question? Ask your parent. Like, I don't know that much about real estate. But the takeaway is like, he respects you that much that he wants your opinion on that aspect of things. So, that's ultimately when you say, why do you do what you do? That's probably it. And I'm not a very social people. When I don't hang out with too many people. It's my wife and my kids, and my team. And so really that is my social network. And I hope that social network, obviously, in the future blossoms.
When I get a message from one of my guys, again, I'm 20 years removed from being a head coach, assistant and a head coach. To this day, it gets me right there.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And it just say, hey, coach, how you doing? I saw that, blah, blah, blah. So in closing, we have the podcast, the blog that we do, and everything that we do is based on what we call 5 pillars. Okay. It's live, love, learn, pray, and inspire. Right. Those are the 5 pillars and my father always taught me, that's where it came from. If you want to live a good life and be the most whole human being you can be. That's the foundation. So taking one of those things, what would be the one thing out of those 5 pillars, live, love, learn, pray, and inspire, that you would like to take and then just magnify it for us? Tell us what is that? Pick one. Tell me what it means to you.
Inspire, I think. Okay. Because I think I have a different approach on, a mindset of life. I always say to the kids, and I say a lot of things to the kids, but, it's all about getting the most out of your life, and I think we talk about it's finding appreciation for everything, walking down to the field and seeing a beautiful, sunset, like enjoying little moments like that, not being stuck on minute things that will never factor into your life in 10 years from now. And I always say when you're 70 or when you're on your deathbed, looking back, how are you going to evaluate your things? I always try to get them to, how are you going to evaluate your thing when it's your when it's your swan song, and when you're ready to move on to whatever that is? When you look back, did you do enough? You know what I mean? Did you make the time? Did you do it positive? I try to inspire kids by realizing that there's a lot more to life outside of the confines of what they get into. There's a lot more. And I don't want to say then football, because I feel like football was the tool to prepare and open that mindset
it's the platform. Things. Absolutely.
But I guess the biggest thing for me would just to find the inspiring of to not engage in some of the things that we engage in as a society, to look at things differently, to be inclusive, to be embracive of all but different people and different things that go on, and then just inspire them to be better people. If I can inspire a group of kids to be better human beings, then in 20 years, that's at least a handful of better people in the society and the community, because
100%.
I hate to say, everyone says, oh, society today, you could probably make a course for any part of society that there's negative. You can always go back throughout history. People that make those comments don't obviously understand history. But, I just hope that I inspire them to think bigger, dream bigger, and to, not live with regret. There's no one on their deathbed that's going to look back and say, gee, I wish I didn't spend all the time at that weir. I wish I didn't spend those. No, they're going to say, I wish I would have spent more time. I wish I would have done more. So
Right.
we always talk about doing more. I hope they do more with everything.
Excellent. And I appreciate your investment in this generation. I think this generation of young people gets a bad rap. Okay.
I agree.
A lot from my generation.
I agree.
And what my generation forgets is I remember we had knuckleheads back then too.
It's cyclical.
You know,
Again, it goes back to
absolutely
history. In the 50s, they were saying the same thing about the kid.
We were no different when we were this age,
Yep.
and they're going to be different when they're our age. But it's young people like you who are investing in these kids.
Yep.
And that's going to make a world of difference, again, 20, 30, 40 years down the road.
Yep.
And by the way, you don't see that end at 70. Make it 90
Sure.
because I can see 70s right over there.
Absolutely.
So, all right, my friend. Hey,
Understandable.
thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Good luck this year. I'll be there. We'll be supporting you 100%.
Absolutely appreciate that.
All right, thanks, man.
Almighty Leopards.
Hey, there you go.